Today, we're joined by someone who has fundamentally reshaped how the world thinks about data and business value. Bill Schmarzo. For those who know him and maybe those who don't know him, he's referred to as the Dean of Big Data. Bill isn't just a data expert, he is a business strategist disguised as a data guy. 30 plus years of analytics, data science, digital transformation. Bill, you've led a number of leadership roles, the CTO of Big Data at Dell, Chief Innovation Officer at Hitachi, VP of Analytics. Bill, welcome to the show.
Arvind, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Bill, you've considered pushing this business first mindset around data, around monetization and value engineering. Walk me through maybe your journey and how you evolved from the days of data warehousing to truly becoming a voice in economics.
Wow, good question.
I want to know how you became the money guy from a technology guy.
We were implementing some of the world's very first data warehouses at Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble was a great mentor for me in the sense that they were very committed to the fact that the use of data had to drive value. It had to be, had to do something other than just reporting what's going on. Right? And they were very adamant in adopting things like Six Sigma and lean computing and such. So they really wanted to make certain that the data was being used to either improve campaign performance or improve new product introductions or all the channel effectiveness. They were really focused on how do you drive value. And that really, I was very young and it stuck with me. I was very fortunate. They sent me to a lot of their training classes. They treated me like I was an employee, and it really helped me to understand how they thought. And that mindset really stuck with me, that every time I would get involved with a client who had this data and they wanted to figure out how to get, I got all this data, what should I do with it? And it had to start with obviously a value conversation. But Arvind, value is a very tricky conversation because every person in an organization defines value different. And so part of what I struggled in a lot of my early experiences, especially in the data warehouse ages, was how do I get people aligned on on what value is? And people to be able to use that data to make more effective decisions became the real inflection point. So to me, that was the training of how do I work with organizations in not only defining how they as an organization measure and define value, but how do you align the organization to be all rowing in the same direction around that value became the big challenge for me, which then led to, it's all about economics, right? It all became an economics conversation. And so it all kind of naturally cascaded to this point where it's like, oh my gosh, it has to be about economics, about the creation and distribution of value or wealth.
It's very interesting you say that value. So a long time ago, you and I were struggling to explain the value to a human. Today, yes, we're going down the same path, but we need to now create a value for AI, meaning explain it to it. In other words, we call it the context engineering. So the context of data for finance is different than context for data for marketing, or I should say context for customer is different from marketing and finance. So we're doing this exact same thing now, but AI is immediately showing you the reality in the ground because it doesn't look at gray areas. It just looks at black and white. Whatever you feed in is what it's going to understand as value.
It is so true. It's both refreshing and dangerous at the same time, right? Because we know that I like to tell, when I talk to my students, say there are three realities of AI. Number one, it will only do what you train it to do. Number two, it will relentlessly optimize around the variables and metrics you give it. Relentlessly, whether you like it or not. Right? And number three, it's going to amplify existing biases, prejudices, and misalignments. And so if you don't, so while AI will execute great, it will take whatever variables and metrics you've given it, and it will auger that right into the ground if you haven't thought more holistically about, well, how as an organization do we as an organization define value? How to define it across our customers, our employees, our partners, our ecosystem, our community, our society, our environment, right? Our ethics, right? All these things have to be factored into the process, which makes it, I think it brings to the surface the things as humans that we know are the right things, but AI is forcing us to be more human in the articulation of how we measure and define value.
I was about to say that the best thing about AI is that it knows how to articulate really well. There's no two ways about it.
Exactly, right.
So, no, fantastic. I want to understand, why do you continue to emphasize data strategy to incorporate business value? Why do so many people get this wrong?
Yeah, so that tells you a lot right there. So I've always believed in that organizations don't need a data strategy. They don't need an AI strategy. They don't need a big data strategy. They need a business strategy that incorporates data, big data, and AI, right? If you want to change the game, sometimes you need to change the frame. When we implemented SAP systems and ERP systems and things like that, that was mostly IT's job. And so there's been this tendency, I think, for executives to push everything related to data and technology to IT. When we know that more and more companies, whether you're Procter & Gamble, whether you're American Express, whether you're Disney, more and more, they're becoming technology companies. The transforming that conversation to say, you want to start with AI first. We want to be an AI native, AI first. No, you want to be value first. You want to make sure that your business is driving that value and that your business is using your data and your AI to help to drive those new sources of customer, operational, and society value. So this data is now it's an important part of every part of the organization. It isn't.
See, I want to kind of double down on this. The way I understand you saying, for example, you mentioned Walt Disney is going towards being a technology company, right? If I were the CEO of Walt Disney, I wish I was, but if I were that,
I'd go on rides all day long. I wouldn't get anything done. I'd be on rides all day long.
I would almost tell myself, or my internal team, my internal Walt Disney team, I'm going to build technology and I'm going to use data to make people happy, to make their experiences happy. So the why is making people happy.
Yes.
And the how and the what. The what is I want to build technology, but not for the sake of technology. Everything I'm building, the end result should be making people happy. Am I getting this right?
Nailed it. Yeah. There's a huge difference between the why and the how.
Yeah.
The why and the what, right? It has to start with why. And Disney's a great example because they're very much focused on guest experience.
That's why they exist. Yeah.
That's why they exist. That's why they can charge a premium on their stocks, why they get paid a premium, right? And for them, it's how does AI and data amplify what I already do well? How does it help me to amplify my ability to provide a superior guest experience? How does it help me amplify my operational excellence in the field? How does a broader audience and bring in more joy, right? They already have a domain expertise. All these organizations, American Express, Procter & Gamble, Walt Disney, they already have these domain expertise. They are great in their space. AI can help everybody amplify the human potential and unleash human creativity in the process to create new sources of value for their customers, for their operations, for their employees, for their communities, for society. It's just, you've got to start with as you said, the why. Why do we exist? And we don't exist because of data. We exist because we provide great toothpaste. We provide great financial services. We provide a great theme park or movie experience. That's why we exist.
You're absolutely right. There's a purpose and there's a result. Like Disney exists to make people happy. And the result is they can charge a premium and they make a boatload of money. But the in-between layer is basically the what and the how. The what is primarily going to be, hey, what kind of architecture technology I need to have to deliver this outcome, which is making people happy. And the how is going into details, which models, what this, what that, what medallion architecture, yada, 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 right? So you that journey kind of aligns with me really well. I want to touch up on something that you talk a lot about. I think when you were in early data science days, when I used to follow you, this was probably 5, 6, maybe decade ago, you were talking a lot about empathy. This was in the context of data science. Has that thinking changed at all? Like you used the word design thinking, if I remember. What is it with design thinking now, especially with AI systems doing a lot of autonomous workflows and all? Does it change? Has it changed?
You need it more than ever. The secret sauce of design thinking is it forces you to understand the source of value creation. And for the vast majority of organizations, value is created not by anybody else but your customers. And design thinking forces you to understand that customer's journey from their first awareness that they have a need all the way through the decision, the execution, the feedback, and hopefully the customer loop cycle. So there's a 5-stage process to design thinking, and you can call the journey map and understanding those journeys that the customer goes. And if you can put yourself and walk in the shoes of your customers, you can identify all kinds of great opportunities. So one of the exercises I do in my classes, for example, is all my students work in groups of 2, and they pick a company and a problem to go after. And at some point in time in the class, they have to do a journey map of the customer for that organization, from awareness to selection to execution, right? All that kind of stuff. They got to go through that. What we do is we try to understand on that journey, what are the high points? What are the sources of value for that customer? But as you go through that journey map, you'll also be able to identify low points, the impediments, limits, standing in line, and it's hot, and it's et cetera, et cetera. You can certainly amplify the value of the high points, but you can also monetize the low point. For example, at Disney, people got tired of standing in line. So what did Disney come up with?
The watch,
The fast track, right? The fast track, which allowed them to control flow of traffic in the park. And so when you walk into the shoes of your customers, if you do personas and value mappings and journey maps and all double diamonds and all the little tricks and techniques that design thinking teaches you, it helps you to uncover the sources of value, the sources of impediments, and how do I amplify those? It gets back to the why. The why was customer experience. How do I amplify and improve that customer experience? The what was fast tracks.
Right.
The how was, here's the technologies you have to cobble together to do all that, right?
Absolutely.
And so your model is spot on.
Yeah, and it almost feels like, see, in software development, you use this word called SDLC, software development lifecycle, right? From inception to dev to test to stage to production, right? And we know that each one of these has a set of best practices and frameworks and whatever. It almost feels that we need to have some sort of customer development lifecycle from awareness to inception to execution and all these workflows in the middle and all the what's and the how's in the middle. I think we need to have a journey map or customer development lifecycle, CDLC, to better understand our customer. And now more than ever, as you said, AI is now exposing us the reality, right? So you have to be very, very clear in that journey map. Otherwise, it's not going to perform the way you expect it to perform. Now, one of the things you have said in the past, you've created frameworks like the Vision Workshop and some of these things, right? And you've obviously released a lot of books as well. In this journey of yours, where are organizations going wrong in two things? One, in defining this journey map that you talked about. And then two, in prioritizing use cases. Look, the biggest problem today is that vendors are selling AI can solve world hunger. Customers are getting overwhelmed by the technological aspects of AI. In all of this, we are forgetting the fact that there are real problems you could solve with AI. You need to prioritize the use cases. And there's a fundamental piece that is missing in these use cases, ROI as an example. So where do you see the gaps?
So I think the problem starts, I'm going to go back to your SDLC thing.
Yes.
I think is good model, right? A very rigid cycle.
Yes.
And I'm going to argue that it's actually, I think, for data science has been replaced by the OODA, what they use in fighter pilots, right?
OODA
Observe, orient, decide, act, learn, and adapt. It's not a 4-step process. It's actually a 6-step process because once you act, you have to learn what worked. You have to adapt so you can go back through the cycle. And that learn and adapt is the secret sauce to what AI is. AI is not an optimization technology. AI is a learning and adapting. And if we think about the AI learning and adapting capabilities, it surfaces up two new economic concepts that I've been talking a lot about. The marginal propensity to reuse and the marginal propensity to learn. So the first one is a data set can be used across an unlimited number of use cases if governed and architected properly across an unlimited number of use cases at zero marginal cost. We've never seen an asset like that. AI takes it one step further. If I think about AI and its ability to continuously learn and adapt, I have what I call the marginal propensity to learn. That is the ability for these assets to learn. So if I build a module around customer retention concerns, right? And it's probably used across a lot of use cases. It's used around customer acquisition. It's used around marketing, right? So I've got a score around a customer's propensity to attrite. Used across a lot of use cases. And it's seen every time it sees a new use case, it gets smarter and relevant. And if I have a case where that particular analytic module is getting smarter, if it gets 1% more effective, every use case that used that analytics just got 1% more effective, and it got it for free. So
that was directly correlated to economic value, possibly of millions of dollars.
Because it compounds. Now you entered one of the most powerful economic concepts we've ever seen, the power of compounding, right? So these learnings can compound. And so the more you learn, the more effective you become, the more relevant you become, the more ethical you become, the more responsible you become. And so to me, that is the challenge is, let's don't think about this AI as a technology challenge. Let's think about it as an economic benefit. How do we not only figure out how do we ensure that the AI models are looking more responsibly across all the economic dimensions, they're considering unintended consequences and second and third order ripple ramifications, but they're embracing the marginal propensity to reuse, marginal propensity to learn, and of course the concept of nanoeconomics, which I've been talking about for 20 some years, which is the idea that I can build very detailed models on each and one of my customers, each one of my guests, each one of my patients, each one of my doctors, right? And I can use that to provide very individualized experience for each and every person. And AI has the ability to do that at scale.
We used to call it hyper-personalization. Like instead of me as a 20-year-old male having, no kids, I will be Arvind Murali, the individual. How many times have I visited Disney? What are my kind of experiences before this? And then create a pattern just for me.
Exactly. And here's an interesting thing. So we did this for a couple of customers. We actually have done this idea and built very detailed models. We did one for a casino whose name I won't mention. And what we did of them is once we have these detailed profiles in each one of our major players, we can calculate what we think their maximum potential value is, not their current lifetime value, but what the gap is between where they are and where they could be. There's techniques using, cluster analysis, the kind of things you can do that. But you can do it it's not done at an aggregate level. It's not saying, well, this group here can be made. It's looking at each person and saying, you know what, this person probably, how do I allocate my comps I give in a casino? Nanoeconomics, not only do you understand what people's individual behavioral performance propensities are, but you know how much more value value you can derive from them and how much more value you can give to them when you know their individual propensities.
No, that makes sense. So where I'm struggling with, right, and this nanoeconomics concept is this. Look, we know that the money is at the nanoeconomics level. A company can really scale when you're looking at this, and AI has made it technologically possible to get it done. Okay.
Right.
And now it can go to that level of data, that level of granularity. However, do we have organizations that are following the nanoeconomics principle? If not, where is the gap? Like, why is every organization not doing the Netflix personal recommendation model, which happened a decade ago?
So there is a certain online retail logistics company, probably one of the biggest in the world, who uses this idea of nanoeconomics to build very detailed profiles in each and every one of its customers. And it uses that technique they call twinning to figure out what products you're likely to buy, and then make certain that those products are available at distribution centers that are within the same day drive. They're soon going to be within a 1 hour drive, right? And so they've taken this down to a very granular level. They understand they've built these very detailed, they got a digital twin on each and every one of us. Exactly. What product you like to buy, how often we buy them, our preferences. And at the individual level, it's very useful. But when you start aggregating those individual propensities up, you can start seeing product patterns around how am I going to staff my DCs here? How am I going to do this, right? How am I going to, more and more of their stores are becoming DCs as well. Right. So there are companies who have done this and they don't talk about it, and they're reaping huge benefits. It isn't just for the big company. AI has democratized that. Right? In my latest book, The AI Human Edge, talks about entity propensity models and entity language models and how any organization can get down to that level of granularity with the right mindset. AI tools can do that, but it isn't going to do it magically. You as an organization have to believe, for example, that your employees are your most valuable asset, because they're the ones who are going to, at the point of customer engagement and operational execution, they're the ones who are going to need that detailed insight to figure out, how do I treat this customer? How do I keep this ride going? How do I do this particular marketing campaign? Right? And so the idea in the book is that I can use AI, these entity propensity models and entity language models, to amplify my domain expertise. Whatever I'm good at today, I can make myself magnitudes better.
So what I'm hearing you say is, look, we all know technologically it's possible.
Yes.
I think it has to be a CEO agenda, not a CIO or even a IT agenda, if you will. Because the moment it becomes a CEO agenda, that they have to truly believe, with AI, I can democratize my products and services to individuals, back to the twinning, right? So I can create digital twins of my individual shoppers, the buyers, right?
Yep.
Every organization has a customer, supplier, and a product. If I'm able to marry them together and create an individual persona of, all the buyers of my company, then essentially I've accomplished. It makes perfect sense. So one thing you haven't told me yet is, how does this CDO role evolve? I don't know, is this a CDO? Who drives this kind of hyper personalization at scale across the organization? Other than the CEO, but CEO has other operational functions they have to manage as well.
So my answer is going to surprise you, because I think the owner is the head of HR.
What?
I think it's yes. If we believe that people are our most important assets, and that we should be using data and AI to amplify their domain expertise and unleash their creativity, we need to convert HR from a risk mitigation organization to a real talent development organization. Who in the organization is working with my nurses to make certain that each and every nurse can become the best version of themselves? Who's working with my sales team to help them become the very best version of themselves? So one of my followers had made the comment that we need a chief learning officer. If we believe that AI can really amplify the learning and effectiveness of our humans, we need to have a chief learning officer who's focused on using AI to amplify our human assets. I thought that was really interesting. Right? Like I said, it's not what you typically would think, right? That somebody in HR really, right? Instead of, again, today HR is a risk mitigation organization. So when people get laid off, they don't get fired, right? They don't get sued, right?
Yeah.
That role is missing the big opportunity. Who is out? Who in that organization is looking to make every employee the best they can become? Today, nobody. Your manager can't do that. Your manager's got a zillion other things, reports and numbers to make. There's nobody across the organization who's looking out at, how do I make my human assets more valuable? Let me give you a real world example.
Okay.
Professional sports. You look at a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, right? They've got development managers. They got people who are head of player development, whose job is to go out there and find that diamond in the rough, like Austin Reeves, who played at Wichita State, I believe.
Right.
His first year, he made, $250,000 a year. They've trained. They knew he had the right skill set, and they worked him to develop. And he's going to be signing probably a $35-40 million contract. He's probably the second best player on the Lakers now. A player development who understands that my job is to take these human assets and to make them more valuable. Why don't we have that for nurses and faculties and engineers and architects and lawyers? Why don't we have this talent development skill? AI is the perfect vehicle for helping every individual become the best version of themselves. So
I love it, because what I'm hearing you say is HR could create these training and mentorship programs as an example, and they can cultivate the power of AI in a sales, in a marketing, in a finance organization to make a better version of themselves. Ultimately, the CEO decides the vision, the mission, and the future of the company, right?
Right.
But then you need all these different departments working together on the same goal. But they also, as AI is impacting every part of your company, you need to know what it is, how it can help you, and how, as you said, you can digital twin your shopper as an example. But a finance would have to look at it differently. Marketing has to look at it differently. Sales has to look at it differently. HR themselves have to look at it differently as well. But could HR create a training program? Is that what I'm hearing you say? Something like that?
So you could twin each one of your employees to understand what they do best. So let me blow your mind.
Okay.
Let's say you're head of B2B sales.
Okay.
And you're trying to increase my sales effectiveness. And today what we do, we assign sales reps based on regions.
Sure.
Based on verticals, right?
Territory assignments. Yeah, right.
Territory, right. The most generic and most average of ways you can do things. What if you could, if you took the time to understand digital twin each of your customers to know where are they from a growth stance, from a budget stance, from an economic growth, right? From all the different 30 to 40 different variables that drive that particular customer's
individuality of that customer. Yeah.
Right. What success they're trying to achieve, right? And what if you had a matching entity model in each and every one of your sales reps? To know who is the right sales rep to match to that particular customer. I have a customer here, for example, who's in trouble mode, trying to figure out how do I reduce costs, how do I mitigate risk, how do I find the right salesperson with the right experience and the right skill sets to help them, to match with them, and how do I put AI in the middle to help the sales rep work with that customer to address their concerns about risk and profits and costs and such. Or another customer, young, growing very rapidly, going maybe too fast. Who's the right rep to work with them? Again, if I understand the propensities of each of my sales reps, instead of signing to customers based on territory, what if I based it on capabilities and needs and put AI in the middle as this mix master to make certain that it's monitoring the success of that sales rep, helping to grow them in areas and they be more successful to help that customer, right? It would totally transform how we do sales. It would make sales for each rep much more fun and interesting because now they're using their best skills. It would help each customer to reach their particular goals and objectives, which aren't all the same, right? What if you did that, right? It would totally transform the B2B sales experience for an organization.
No, absolutely. But tell me, this is perfect because now you're creating a digital twin of the individual seller who's dealing with that B2B, for example, right? A big, large customer with complex environments versus a young, small business SMB segment, right? Yeah, I get that. But how does HR help me here? Like, where would you put HR in all of this?
You need somebody who's got the responsibility for helping to build those digital twins in each of your customers or each of your employees. Has the responsibility of knowing what are the skills that are most important in designing programs to elevate this, to mitigate. You might have, so I wrote a blog about the 3 arcs of professional development, right? That people go through, right? You go through what I call the competency stage. You're trying to learn the business. You go through the proficiency stage where you're now becoming a master of your profession. And then you go to the elevation stage where you're elevating your team and maybe even an entire profession. HR would have the job of leveraging AI to create individualized training programs to help people navigate and accelerate that journey process. I do it in my class. Right? We have an experiment we do with our students. They pick what profession they want to go in. They pick who are the best people in that particular profession. They use AI, a series of prompts to feed a bunch of information into it, and it helps them to design a development program to model. If I want to go into nursing, looking at the 2 or 3 best nurses in the world, nurses who have been successful, who are giving back to society, who can model after themselves. Right? This is not black magic. It's just somebody who is passionate about helping to amplify the organization's single most important asset, their employees, who have all that valuable tribal knowledge and domain expertise that allows AI to drive that levels of differentiation.
This is fascinating, man. I love the way you started. That's right. That's right.
500 pages. 500 pages. Why is it 500 pages? Because this topic isn't lightweight. It isn't something like, oh, I'm just going to put a bunch of data into a large language model. Like, there's no friggin' easy button for AI. It takes work, but it starts by understanding and believing that your most important assets are your employees. And what am I doing to amplify that to increase more customer value, increase operational value, increase society value, create all the areas that can drive new sources of value. It is truly a game changer.
This is absolutely fascinating. I've got to tell you, I have, in my experience, the last couple of years I've been doing this podcast, I've never heard anybody talk about this. This is a new angle. Look, everybody came in either from a technology perspective or from a data standpoint or from a business perspective. Nobody came in from an employee standpoint. By the way, I don't disagree at all on your statement. I'm just saying this is a very interesting angle. And I think the fact of the matter is HR, as you already know, does not have the kind of KPIs that you're talking about yet.
Nope. So again, the model for this is professional and college sports. So I had 2 professional baseball teams and a athletic director for a very large D1 college who came to me with this challenge. And this is the response I came up with, right? That they are focused on player development, right? How do I go out and think about all the different use cases and decisions to make for, think if you're a college athletic director around player recruiting, scholarships, NIL, in-game usage, injury mitigation, all the decisions they have to make. You have to have very detailed profiles built, causally driven profiles using causal AI that builds those models. And then we use language models, very domain specific language models, to provide the context that allows me to monitor that. I can monitor, for example, when a wide receiver in the fourth quarter is getting off the line a little slower than normal. They seem to be, their stride is not the same amount. With video cameras on the field, my language models can see that and say, you know what, that player needs to come off. You need to replace him. There's something wrong there. That's where we're getting to. And that same level of intelligence in trying to get the most out of your employees can apply to nurses and architects and detectives and social workers. We just don't think that way.
No, we do not. So, before I wrap up, I want to ask you this, and I know the answer, but I want to ask you anyway. 10 years from now, based on your theory now, HR needs to have this power of molding people and personalizing AI as a digital twin, even for employees in the first place, before creating digital twins for, customers, right? How do you give me a fundamental shift that organizations need to think about in this vein or in this regard, where your vision comes to reality, especially in organizations, non-sports?
One really easy point. Do you truly believe your employees are your most valuable assets? Now, most organizations will say, oh, our employees are our most valuable asset. And then when the economy goes soft, who are the first people to let it go? Right?
Of course.
All that valuable tribal knowledge, domain expertise walks out your door. You're giving away huge amounts. A lot of times they're walking to your competitors. You're giving your competitors all your domain expertise. Until companies believe that the true power of AI is amplifying the domain expertise of your employees, if you believe that AI, using generative AI, correlation-based analysis, it's the productivity play, writing better reports and such, if you think that's the game, don't talk to me. But if you're serious and realize that, wait a sec, AI is not an optimization technology, it's a learning and adapting technology. It can build employees because there's one other asset that learns and adapts besides AI: humans. And when I couple them together, I get that AI human edge. The AI human edge, right? That allows me to drive intelligence to create new sources of value for my customers, for my operations, for my society, for my environment. You can have it all with AI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can have it all is what the man says. Bill, this is a fascinating discussion. I'm pretty sure there's a part 2 to this. I want to bring real HR people into this and have them debate with you as well, because they will tell you the reality in the ground as to what they have and what they don't have and what they need. Right?
Oh, I agree that they don't have it. So I think it's because most AI departments aren't talent development. They're risk mitigation.
That's right. They are titled talent development, but for them, it's just a bunch of training and programs and those kind of certifications, those traditional HR talent. Yeah.
They treat everybody like a cog. You're all the same. And by the way, if you rely on averages to drive your business, at best, you're going to get average results.
No, this is fantastic, man. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be amazing. I look forward for having more of these discussions with you. Bill, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Arvid. Cheers.
Really appreciate it.